Hey, Michelle, what are we doing today?
Hey, Mattie. So college applications are kind of baking in the oven right now. So I thought it might be interesting to talk about Ivy League college admissions trends to watch for 2025.
I'm excited to do it. Let's go.
All right, so I think this is going to be really useful information, especially like for high school juniors who are going to be applying to college later this year. This was an article that came out in Forbes that kind of is signaling what trends to look for this coming up year. So, and I'm really curious just to kind of know like what your takes are going to be about these trends. There's one in particular that I really want to know about. But the first one that we're going to talk about, they kind of go hand in hand, but it's the return of standardized testing requirements, and also kind of seeing how this caused a little bit of a decline in early applications. So as we know, like during COVID, a lot of schools they did away with a testing requirement. They went test optional. So students could decide whether they wanted to submit SAT or ACT scores. But now we're seeing Dartmouth, for example, they were kind of the first one to go back to standardized testing. And then Brown, Yale, Harvard, and Cornell quickly followed suit. So I guess the first thing that I'm curious about is like, why do you think that they're going back to this testing requirement?
Because the kids didn't know how to do math, Michelle, I believe is.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, did they see something in their student body and they're like, we need this test scores back?
One of my lines I stole from my mother this is back when I played. MIT doesn't make mistakes. And it's a great line because they really don't. And MIT was the first school to reinstitute standardized testing.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to know like where we stand, we are still in the post-COVID era of college admissions.
Right.
If you want to say like, yes, there's a post Supreme Court decision era. However,
True.
like I think a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about is I don't know, backlash. Like we're in the post COVID era. You know, like we are coming back from it.
Right.
And it is always going to be difficult, if not impossible, for me to separate a lot of changes that schools have made and are now reverting back from. How much of it was these actual test optional policies versus how much of it was just COVID made everything chaotic.
Okay.
We could do a whole episode on test optional. However, that episode would have been a lot more relevant 2 or 3 years ago. And
yes, exactly.
That's why I can say I know test optional. Like you're saying, like it's on the way out. It's like test optional is gone. You know,
so you think it's all the schools are just going to move back to test requirements?
Well, not quite the same thing.
Okay.
So we're talking about specifically like Ivy League schools. I know like everyone kind of caught wise around the same time that I think that it became more obvious that if you are trying to get into elite universities, your top 10, top 20 schools, you need to have your test scores. Mm-hmm. And that was pretty much my take on it almost immediately. My other take on it was that I almost told a kid who had a 1480 to go test optional to Harvard because and then I course corrected because I really thought about it. And then I openly apologized to that kid, telling him I almost shot that kid in the face for trying to trust me because I didn't know how to handle this correctly. And I thought about that constantly. It's like I almost screwed that kid over big time. And I do believe there's another article I could probably find it to be linked to, is that was one of the major reasons they reverted the test optional policy, that exact edge case.
Okay.
And I went, yep, because that was my big take on test optional, is like you are absolutely screwing over a kid who has a 1450 or a 1480,
right, who
wants to go to these top schools and goes, okay, I'm in the bottom 30% or whatever, like whatever stupid formula you want people. Test optional is like its own thing. We could do, when it's at some point we could do like a burial of test optional, because I have pretty strong opinions on it that are pretty negative.
Okay.
But the article, I remember reading the article, where it was like that specific edge case is like total BS, and that's why they got rid of it. I do believe like that was the take on MIT, is like the kids can't do math.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, that's a problem. It turns out that standardized testing does actually have some merit, like as an actual.
It is an indicator then.
Right. It has some merit outside of neatly putting a number next to a student to help admissions offices. Like it is actually not an aptitude test. Like it is a test of what the knowledge students are supposed to have by the time they reach higher education. I don't think I've had a family ask me about test optional in like over a year and a half or 2 years, because that's my big take on test optional, is in 2021 and 2022, endless test optional pieces, to the point where that was one of my consultation things. Is like, I'll be like, yo, you want to know about like test scores? And the answer would either be no, we have a 15, 20 plus. So like, cool, you're set. Or people would be like, yes, please save us. Please tell us what to do.
Okay.
and this will be in the in memoriam episodes. Like I made money because I could tell people what said their test scores or not. Like I get mad anytime that
Right.
me as like this weird like floating cloud man could be on Zoom explaining, be like, yeah, okay, so you have a 1470, but like your splits are good. It just added such a insane variable that the kid who got screwed was a kid with a 1480 who didn't send their test scores to Harvard because that's not high enough. That kid got
Jeez.
absolutely boned over, and now I'm glad that kid doesn't have to get screwed over anymore because that was still happening. Um,
Yeah.
Yes, but like, yeah, a lot of change. Like, yes, but now it's reverting back. I got cranky about test optional. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you are.
It's
That is a little cranky.
I have strong opinions about test optional,
Yeah.
and I get they come to the forefront because they haven't been terribly relevant in the last couple of years. Because I think the secret's out that if you want to get to top schools, you need your 1500 plus. You just do, because
Right.
if you play to top, you just don't get in. And but like probably yes, I think the other side of this is students are applying to more schools than ever. I That was definitely unexpected by these Michelle, especially during COVID, to suddenly have 60% more applicants than they expected. That was
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
gone down a little bit, but like now we're caught in a, our students apply to 25 schools. It's like and
Right.
I'm almost kind of bitter about that because they applied to 25. I wish it was like 1992, and like I would have them, you would be helping them mail in letters. Yeah. Can you imagine how you think my process is different?
I cannot
You think my
imagine.
process is any different? This is like 1987, and we're mailing this stuff in. You think I changed a goddamn thing? No, of course not. It would just work better. Oh, it'd be incredible. It'd be
So if
incredible.
you had a student then where you think they have a strong application, but maybe they're having problems like kind of getting that score. Do you have like advice for them?
I give them the same talk I would give them before, as I would explain clearly but sternly, is you really want like a 1500 or a 1520 slash a 34 on the ACT. If you have a 1480, we can play with it. The splits matter. If you're applying STEM,
Okay.
you want to have a 770 plus math. You want a higher math. If you're applying liberal arts, you probably want a higher reading. Like that is probably good enough. I do not believe a 1450 is good enough, and I've said it.
Okay.
And I can be very stern about this because every single student I've worked with who has everything else, there's two conversations. One is I go, they have test score, and they go, rah, 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 and I immediately forget about the score unless it's a 1590, and I'll poke fun at them throughout the year because it's funny. Or they will go, it's this, but I'm going to fix it. I'll go, what are you trying to get? And they'll go like 1520 or 1550. I'll go, good. And then
Okay.
every single time, literally my entire career, they've shown up and somewhere between like extremely proud of themselves or just relieved.
Yeah.
They'll mention like I got the number, by the way. They go, excellent, and like, cool, I'm proud of you, and then we move on. Yeah, like it's just part of the game to get into these top schools, and if you don't have it, I'm sure there is a student somewhere who has everything else but just cannot get their SAT or ACT score. I do believe that student exists. It's not me trying to be really like nasty about it.
Okay.
However, I've never met them. I've never met that student who just couldn't. And I would say it's 70 or 80%. They just have the goods when they show up. And 30% they have something like a 1420, 1450, and they've made it. And like the look in their eyes is like, this is not optional. This is no one's bullying. I'm not bullying anyone into a 1500 or a 1520. Like they know that what they need. Quite honestly, like in the memorial for test optional, it's come up in very niche cases that actually matter. It's lower down the list. It's students who want to get into UWash Seattle, and students who want to get into
Okay.
Well, the UCs still don't take test scores. That'll probably be like that's the next big hurdle is what the UCs do about their scores.
Yes.
Yes. I kind of respect the UCs for just not accepting test scores. That's a lot better than test optional. Like that's another part of it is like they can do what they want in that regard.
Right.
Yeah, like test optional continues to be a bummer if you have a 1580 in California, because now that doesn't mean anything for the UCs.
That's true. Yeah.
But mostly it's right. But like, yes, like schools are officially reverting. However, both I think internally and also probably more relevant, like in public perception, this has been reverted for a while now due to the fact that I've simply not had any students in any way be like, by the way, can I go test optional in this school? It doesn't come up.
Okay.
Like they and their parents, they know better. Like the secret's out.
Yeah. And so some of the schools are already kind of reporting a little bit of a decrease in early applications. Like I think Brown, their applications were down like 1,200. They got 1,200 less. And Yale also had like a 14% decrease. So is there does your strategy change knowing that there's a little bit of a decrease? Like
0%.
Is it easier?
My strategy 0%.
Okay.
Like gas pedal, girl. Like come on now. Like come on, shit. I was joking about it.
It doesn't make it any easier to get in, right?
No. One of my jokes was it's test optional, not application optional.
Okay.
So like it's like I know usually be a little more heated about it is something about test optional gave, I believe, a large chunk of students, combined with a lot more free time during COVID, which I guess is maybe is combined with anxiety of like there's an arms race where everyone else is applying to super schools, so you have to, like, those are the three factors that led into it. Probably in order, it is test optional, then the arms race, then COVID, because COVID kind of went, it's not COVID anymore. People are still applying at a higher rate, although it's gone down a little bit. Those three factors all come together. What was the original question?
So, yeah, I mean, with a decrease in applications, does that mean like your chances go up, or that it's easier, or?
I never paid really any attention to, like, the higher application numbers. Like, these schools
Okay.
love talking about what a crazy, wonderful thing test optional is to even the player pool. Also, admissions are lower than ever. Michelle, have you heard? Like, acceptance rates are dropping across the country. Also, have you seen the average freshman? Like, was when NYU had like a 1560 freshman SAT.
It's crazy, right?
We'll do it with a test optional episode when it's finally dead. Like, we'll put a bullet in it, but I never cared, like, I think admissions schools, this process doesn't change that much. And maybe it's a bit ironic because we're talking about, like, the big changes in college admissions. Is I got in this industry, COVID really did change. Like, COVID was a weird time. There was a year or two where COVID made things very different for a lot of different reasons. My experience, and this has been experience whenever there's changes, is these schools play defense. They weather the storm, which is what they have successfully done, by the way, with the Israel-Palestine conflicts on campus. Like, they turns out, like, Nate Silver was wrong. Like, the Ivy Leagues are still doing okay. If you can believe it, they survived another one. They're still the Ivy Leagues. It's still good to go to Harvard. They weather the storm. And then they slowly but surely revert to the norm, like, all at once, a way that's, like, pretty, like, behind the scenes, and then publicly, like, stuff like this. It's like everything just goes back to the way it's always been at the Ivy Leagues, at the top schools. And I never paid much attention to test optional at the top level. It never came into my considerations in the first place. I was still telling a student, you need a 1520. And to be quite honest, I never had the student who couldn't get it. So I don't know what I do. My guess is I go, okay, we'll apply. If it was a 1480, we'd send it. If it was a 1450, we'd go test optional, and they wouldn't get in anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty accurate. It's like, if you're test optional, unless you were specific cases, which we'll get into the test optional episodes. There's a lot more to say about what test optional is actually for. So, like, business is still, like, my strategy is exactly the same, and I think students should be as well. Like, you should not have been trusting test optional as an ace in the hole, because I don't think it worked. I don't think many kids got in with test optional. I think there was just a lot more applicants that were
okay.
Somewhere out there is the really wonderful student who just could not get that 1500. Like, a student must exist, and you can contact me if you're that student. I'll be interested to, I guess, email chat with you about it. I never met them. I don't know who that student is. I have no examples in my career of that student. So test optional has never been a relevant situation.
Okay.
They either had the goods plus the test scores, or they did not, in general.
Yeah. And there's kind of, Forbes also kind of has coined this term new Ivies. So of course, yes, students are still applying to the Ivies, but there's kind of these newer schools that are becoming more popular. And like you're saying, everybody's applying to more and more colleges. So these new Ivies, Forbes kind of puts the list of Vanderbilt, Rice, Duke, Emory, WashU, Notre Dame, and NYU are some that they've said. So their applications are skyrocketing. So, like, NYU used to have a 35% acceptance rate. Now they have an 8% acceptance rate. Rice University, they've doubled their applications in the last 10 years. So, like, what do you kind of counsel with your students on how to, kind of pick these schools for their college list? Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting. Like, Duke is an Ivy plus because Duke doesn't fit in that school. Maybe Vanderbilt. Like, listen, hearing those names, I was like, no, Duke's too good to be on that, like, fake ass, like, Ivy list. Like, Duke's real. So I in my nuclear launch codes, which I've mentioned before, maybe Charlene can pop up again. I color coordinate. This time a lot better than my results color coordination, and I basically have roughly four tiers of schools. Your top tier is Harvard, Princeton, MIT, Caltech, Stanford, Wharton, Yale, and Columbia. Then I have the second tier is Duke, Penn, Brown, Dartmouth, Hopkins, Chicago, Northwestern, Vanderbilt. Then there in the third tier is Notre Dame, Cornell, USC, Rice, Carnegie, Georgetown, Berkeley, UCLA, Michigan, NYU, WashU, Virginia, Georgia Tech, Tufts, and Emory. And then the last tier starts with UC Santa Barbara, and it's basically every other school in the country. And then I have a somewhat similar coloring coordination for LACs, but basically the short version is Williams, Amherst, Swarthmore, Pomona are kind of in that Duke tier, and then Harvey Mudd, Bowdoin, Wellesley, Claremont McKenna, Carleton, Barnard, and Wesleyan are in that red tier with the NYUs and the Carnegies of the world, and that's a very short version of me just reading it off. And that's, I guess that's kind of as I see it, that this is a pyramid. So if you want to know, like, my real takes on like the present and future of college admissions is that the rich are going to get richer, especially with like computer science no longer being the ace in the hole. That people are asking me a lot about computer science.
Right.
I want to do a computer science episode. I'm gonna tag that, but like when people ask me about like what's the future of computer science, it's like, well, my take is it's going to become very similar to finance in that the latter exists.
Interesting.
Basically, it's a pyramid. It's a pyramid scheme, or it's a pyramid, it's not a scheme. It's a pyramid, but like getting onto the pyramid is like really, really hard. We're currently 5 years ago getting on was but like if you get on, it's really nice. You can still get up and you can make good money and then become Steve Jobs or whatever. But now just getting onto that, like finance is itself a hassle. And my theory is that both, I think, correctly, and also certainly in the minds of anxious parents, the game is going to be like, well, you have to go to the best CS program. You have to go to the correct one. That is how you get on. Okay. That is how you jump onto the ladder. That's exactly how finance works. So I believe that the future of college admission is just going to be a continued pursuit and desperation to get into these ultra elite universities, your Harvards, your Yales, your Stanfords, et cetera, especially for computer science. I also believe that Duke, Penn, Brown, Dartmouth, Hopkins, Chicago, Northwestern, and Vanderbilt are going to remain just as they're all very popular schools, and they're all extremely prestigious. Right. It's hard for me to. Yes, they're also going to go up in difficulty and want from people around the country and world, because the global superpowers also want to send their kids to Dartmouth and Northwestern. But then we get into Notre Dame, Cornell, Berkeley, Rice. These are like my wheelhouse. My students have always done very well here, and I just don't think they're as difficult to get into by a pretty notable margin than the list above it. I see these like kind of. These are the ones. Like this is what I would just find like what they're trying to say is like the what is the new Ivies?
Right. That's what they're kind of coining the term. Yeah.
Because I don't think Brown and Penn are a new Ivy, and I don't think Duke is either. You know, it's like
right.
Like this tier. Not this year, you know. Like I don't think I'm certainly not worried about it being more difficult. It hasn't. I guess if suddenly my students are getting locked out of Michigan or locked out of Carnegie or locked out of Rice, I'll change my tone. But I think these are stable. And maybe that's again like the irony of like what's new in elite college admissions is this is a massive process that's like just trillions of dollars and all like it's more stable than not. And I think it's a pretty logical thing. Like what was the article? Was the article basically arguing that schools like these are now raising in difficulty, prestige, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes, exactly. And I wonder too, is like the return of the testing requirement, will students not maybe apply to as many Ivies and instead they're kind of dropping down to these tiers? So does that make these more competitive?
See, I think students have wised up that you can apply to both, which is I believe that test optional like formally going away and just people no longer thinking it's some cheat code. What you are really losing are the unqualified applicants in the first place. So I joke, it's not applicant. Okay. I believe that the massive increase in applications were from students kind of shooting their shot or YOLOing these schools that suddenly felt they had a chance that their once upon a time 1400 would have dismayed because they may still have a 3.9. They may still or they may have a 3.8 and think they'll get away with it. You know, like I don't know. Like it's there's a stability in these results, and maybe ask me again in 4 months when I've heard back from. It's hard. Is this Forbes article? Are they talking about like right now, or in the next 10 years? Because right now, no, things are going to be very similar to how they were last year. I think. It's really we're talking like I'd say next 5 to 10 years. I see an increased push in the top 2 tiers, specifically for computer science, because I believe that will be the idea. Is like you can't get a Michigan computer science degree isn't good enough anymore. A Virginia isn't good enough anymore. That's why it's. Maybe Carnegie Mellon goes up because maybe is a Carnegie Mellon degree good enough? Probably. Is a Cornell degree good enough? Probably. Berkeley, UCLA, probably. Like those are the 4 that jump out to me. Is that like maybe Georgetown? Like those are schools that jump out to me. But your Rices and your Notre Dames and your St. Louis's and your Emory's and your NYU's, like they mentioned, I don't see it because I don't see and it's real tea leaving here. I'm just trying to predict like what it's because really it's customer driven. It's like what are they going to want? It's just hard for me to believe that
Yes.
with the nature of how I see the value of a college education, specifically in STEM, going, it's hard for me to believe that same family is going to want a WashU in St. Louis more than they did 5 years ago or more than they do now. Like I don't see it because
Okay.
I don't think it holds the level that it needs to for what I foresee as the future of what people want in a college degree, which is to get or parents and students is like to have a CS degree good enough to get them into FANG. So
Right, right, right.
and then the tier below, like this is an entirely different. I think the state schools are going to be just fine. Your Santa Barbara's fine. All the UCs are good. Your average state schools are going to be just fine. I if there's doomsday, like it continues to be, like Tulane's one of them. Sorry, like where I went to school, it's going to be your middle class reaches. I used to call them is like Boston University, Brandeis. Then we go in, of course, the LAC land. You know, like Oberlin, Vassar, Middlebury, Colgate. These are the schools that because we're already seeing the tier below them, which are like schools we don't even think about or talk about. You know, like you're really kind of like
Yes.
seedy liberal arts colleges that like they I visited and they were very no, I'm sorry. Those are like you can go just suture now. Those schools are all going out of business. You know, like that is the current. If you want to know,
Yes,
like the
exactly.
bottom of the
Yeah.
pyramid. Well, that's the bottom, and it is falling apart. But then what's between that and the schools that I've been talking about before that I think are going to be like I don't like Georgetown's going to be fine. Like maybe that's what I'll say. It's like it's not going the other way. But what's in between that? Well, you have your meat and potato state schools, and they're going to be just fine because students want state schools just fine. If anything, those will move up a little bit. But yeah, like also in that group is Haverford College, it is Davidson College, it is Bates,
Okay.
it is these private, it is Lehigh, it is Pepperdine, it is a series of private pay universities that are going to be more expensive than your state option that certainly offer something in theory offer something more. You know, they like Tulane offers yeah, like whatever they claim to, and I'm sure they do not appreciate me talking about that this way, but Tulane, like only at Tulane, only New Orleans, guys. Like I know, but that's where like my big bet is they're going to be the ones who are going to be really not like I would not be wanting to run the head of a solid but like I would not want to be running Colby College.
Right.
I would not be running Scripps. Like I would not want to be running Tulane. I would not want to be running Northeastern. Like you know, like sorry guys, like as much as you try to climb the U.S. News World Report, the fact is that like you are a vanity school, I
Yeah.
guess. Insofar as your degree does not it's about the degree. It's about the piece of paper, and that is what I think is going to push. And it's not even the connections. Like it's. I see the value is especially in the STEM degree from these schools, just in the same way a finance degree from certain places or a business degree from certain places it both does and certainly has a perception it opens doors to a higher level of that world that people are desperate for they or their kids to get into.
Okay.
Like that is the future now. I think the same thing's happening for computer science and somewhat engineering, mostly computer science. So a Tulane computer science degree does not hold any merit above your average state school. Neither does any liberal arts college. Some of them like it's even worse. And that's where I think they're going to be the ones who hurt. So it's much more. I have this prediction that you're like in my case, the third tier of schools is going to like get more prestigious and harder to get into. I think that it's the fifth tier is already crumbling. It's the big
Yes.
fourth tier that is not the state programs. They're the ones who are going to falter. Like it's going to get bad.
Okay. Okay.
Here's a fun story, Michelle. So in 2026, uh, let's this year, 2025, is 17 years after 2008.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
Well, in 2008, the U.S. economy collapsed. You were there. I was there. It was great. It
Right.
was great.
Yes. Yes.
There's a population cliff coming. Basically, decline is that in the next few years, there's going to be a radical decrease in this number of students in America that are 17, that are 16, are 17, are 18. So I loaded up a chart here, and there's many like if you just search population cliff on you can look at different charts that have different numbers, but essentially, it is currently the year of our Lord 2025. And according to this chart, there are about 4.45 million 17-year-olds.
Okay.
I guess something that also I find interesting about this chart is that in 2009, you can see the very beginning of it was 4.7. And I was 17 in 2009. And that was the boogeyman of me applying to college. Like when I was in high school,
Right.
it was the boogeyman was I believe the year it was the year before us and our year. where like there were more 17-year-olds, and there are more currently, I guess, 34, 35-year-olds in America than there are any other age. Like I'm about to turn 34. So
Okay.
like, and because I'm a millennial, we are the children of the baby boomers,
Right.
and they all had a billion vanity kids, like they love collecting them. I'm one of four, and and everything was going. Then there's a downturn where Gen X has their children. It's a pretty stable mark until right around the time that, well, like late Gen X and my generation are exposed to like get their shit together, and then that is in 2008. The economy collapses,
Yeah.
and then you can see here within about a 5-6 year period, the basically the replacement rate, if you will, of life of 17-year-olds is down about 400,000. Then things stabilize out when the economy recovers. But then, well, millennials realize we're never going to have houses, and no. That's not a different episode. That's a different podcast, Michelle. And now we're down to, but yeah, like by 2040, we're looking at 3.7, 3.6 million. So like that is a substantial drop.
Yeah.
And what I like showing this to students is this is going to be a national news story. This is going to be a big deal in the years ahead. And it has not been a news story because a minor, a human, the first time they really matter is when they're applying to college, because that is the first time they directly impact the U.S. economy. And it's like, say that to like 17, be like, oh, well, I don't matter. Like as far as like the charts go, no, like you really don't. Like you don't really impact the global until you're applying to college, and that's why it can be interesting. Is like that this is going to be the a defining aspect of the next 20 years of U.S. life, is that like we don't have as many people as we used to, for good or for better or for worse. But like everyone will hear about it because suddenly there is 10 and then 20 and then 30. Yeah, there's 10 and then 20% fewer students applying to college. That this is why it's all hard for me to kind of wrap together with like college admissions is more competitive than ever. It's like,
yes, exactly.
But what is happening, and like it never was, right? Like there's only X students in America applying to schools. There's not some magical reason that they're like, if you're a competitive applicant, I believe you're just as competitive as you were had test optional not made it. So there was 70% more applications. Like it doesn't make any sense. Who is the, like this is a contest. Like this is not a lottery, children. Like this is a real competition where there's logic and reason behind who they pick. And I found that to be this is not a goddamn lottery. It's not just like, oh no, there's more people. This is a competition to see who's the most qualified. And like, I guess find me another student. Like, who is that magical student who like really is wonderfully qualified? Like it's the first version, like, couldn't get the test scores up. That kid, I can't find them. But then who's the kid that just like YOLOs a bunch of Ivy League schools and gets into them when like they weren't that great in the first? Like, because that's who it is. That's who it is. Yeah, and I guess the only thing in theory it should get easier to like college admissions is easier than ever. Like they'll shut down shop. No, just because. I still believe that the fervor and the rate that students want these top schools families is going to go up, and also the extra wrinkle is that like these schools are going to counter by just accepting more and more international applicants, and like that is not going away. Like the interest and engagement with international Chinese and Indian, like usually very wealthy families for these top programs, that's not going anywhere.
Yeah, okay.
So my guess is if you could interview the insides, like, well, they know this chart too. Like, okay, well, we're going to counterbalance that by letting X% more international in.
Got it. Okay.
And keep our acceptance rates as low as possible. Like the things they want to keep doing anyways.
And okay, this is the one that I really want to hear your opinion about. What in the world is the video introduction all about? Like, this has definitely affected us and our students this year, because I think like last year, maybe one student had to do the video, and this year it seems like all of them are. So what's up with this trend?
You tell me, Michelle, I offshored it to you. This is a cry for help. This is me. This is you very politely via our podcast telling me to stop booking you to do the videos with no insight or feedback or help whatsoever. Yeah, so we got to talk about the interview. This one's a little bit different, where this could be like us actually having like a Zoom call, as like talking about it.
Right.
Because it came on me by surprise as well. Like, what schools do you remember having? So Brown had it, Chicago had it. Any other schools?
There were some others that you could go on, I think that platform called Glimpse, and do like a little 90-second introduction. And it just seems like okay, here's a question. When they say it's optional, is it really optional, or do you just need to do it?
The only optional piece of application work is if the answer is no.
Okay.
It's like optional. Do you want to share a footage? Like, yeah, do you have anything to share us to be on our application? If the answer is no, then you can. The big one is like, have you been arrested for a
Right.
misdemeanor or a crime? Like, no. Then you don't have to write. You don't have to do a video about your time at Sing Sing. But if yeah, this one's almost tabling. But yeah, because it snuck up on me because it used to always be like one school would be like, hey, how about a video too? And I go like, come on, man. And
Exactly.
yes, it's unfair. There were multiple students where I was like, maybe I should have just dumped this on Michelle because that sometimes that stuff gets on your plate where it's stuff that the intersection is, it's like I know what to do and I have an interest in it and like it's important.
Hmm.
And I guess you have taken on more and more. Like you start with we start with EC list, which is incredibly important, and I don't want to do it. I'm terrible at it. And then you took on a lot of stuff that looked like somewhere was like not as important. I definitely don't want to do it. The video, yeah. This one is I don't have. You can see how how when I don't know, this is what it looks like. It's like I've changed the subject and hold my hair. Um, I'm going to. This one is very much a point of emphasis. I call it every year, and maybe that's a good like. There is new stuff in college admissions, and every year there is, and
Okay.
maybe it's easy for me to just think about the last 6 years as some giant glob. But yeah, every year there's like new little wrinkles, and when part of the benefit of going through is like when something is new is like yes I notice and so do you
Yeah.
and that is why is this new what are they trying to figure out like why would they do this that is often the most helpful way to figure out what their new institutional priorities are.
Yes. Like, do you think is it going to replace like the interview, or is it just a whole nother new component?
Right, so let's talk about I guess there's two questions. Why are they doing this and what do they want? I believe why they're doing this and how important is it?
Yeah.
And I've raised it from like a 3, which would be that to be fair, I would say the interview, I'd probably put about a 3.5 is the value. And I put the video at a similar, which is you can't win shit with it. Excuse me, can't win S, but you could in theory lose it. And that's my takes on interviews is I think they're not useless, and you don't want you got to do them. You got to do a good job. But like, yeah, you can't win with an interview. I don't think you can win with a video. I don't think.
Hmm.
But you don't want to do a bad one. But that's the thing is, the part where I had you do it, like before, I would be like, I don't know, kid, do a tour of your thing,
Right.
and
Right.
we'll table this one for next year because that is going to be I call it a point of emphasis.
Yeah.
Last year, the point of emphasis was getting you up to speed and introducing you into the process. Like that was the point of emphasis, and you'll find point of emphasis tend to be a little sloppy along the way, but obviously I really care. And on the end, I'm saying like, okay, next year when we're good at this, do that. It's
Yes.
like
Exactly.
yes, the video. Yes, that's maybe a testament to like this does change. I don't know, and we will have to update students that are listening to this, being like, "Hey, what about the video?" I will have a much better answer. Well, probably by October and November because that's when
Okay.
we will have a much longer, more in depth discussion, not on the YouTubes probably about this, and then figure it out because yes, it's a new thing, and I need to figure out like why schools are so into it, what their goals are, because that's imperative for me to then go figure out okay, what do they want then. And that is, yeah, like that has been my entire process. Is like, how important is this? Okay, it's important, or it's not. If it's important, like, what do they want? And I guess it's a little cynical. It's like, then we give it to them.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
yeah, like I know the part where you're like, I'm excited for your opinion on this. Like, I'm excited to come up with one, and we're gonna come up with it together. It'll be our video, but yeah, because the current status quo of just wing it. That's why it's yeah, because it's a lot of work.
It's a ton of
It's
work.
strange.
Yeah.
That's my big takeaway. It's strange that schools would be moving into this realm because I've often felt that the reason that essays are king in this process, the college application process, why I don't worry so much about essays being eliminated, is that essays are equitable. The college application writing is about as equitable as you can get for a formalized college application. Whereas as soon as you bring in videos and any sort of that stuff, it suddenly really isn't terribly fair or terribly equitable for everyone applying. Not everyone can make a good video. Not everyone has the tools
Exactly.
nor the
Yes.
I mean, the skill set's one thing. Not everyone knows how to write either, quite honestly, but they should in theory. But yeah, like that was always why I'm surprised it's speaking of COVID, like it's like the virus is spread. It is not it is not a pandemic, but like it was just a germ in a lab that I was handing off to my associate scientist Michelle, but now it is splintered, and now there's a couple more dot points. And
Yes.
I guess I will be just as interested to see when supplements stuff comes out. I guess it's usually beginning of August. I will be control effing video content. I will be searching if there's new video content that people want for the early round,
Oh,
because
okay.
if it is again spread, if suddenly like there's an outbreak in Ithaca and Cornell is looking for a video now for the farm school, like that is incredibly important. And
Right.
it's
Yes.
hard for me to really give a clear mention because it's still pretty small. It's like Brown and U Chicago, but like it's Brown was the big one that added. Did Brown have one last year?
They did have one. Yes. I want to say like Duke had the glimpse video thing as well.
Duke?
I think so.
There's been reports in Raleigh. Oh God. Yeah. Yeah. Stay tuned for that one, I guess, is my.
Yeah. And I guess, so just kind of our discussion about these trends today, like what do you want juniors to kind of take away from this information?
Well, that the fact that I got legitimately heated about like a video series, like, oh, but Michelle, we need to react. Well, it is a testament to, I guess two things. One, that business tends to be more stay the same. Like things tend to more stay the same than not year to year. Do not ever believe like this year is not going to be radically harder nor easier nor anything than the year prior or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It will be different than COVID because COVID was really messed up, and
Yeah.
that's its own episode where it's like I feel like I should write that like a requiem for the 2021 admissions process, because holy smokes was that like if you say this is the hardest year ever, you're wrong. By the way, 2021 was the hardest year ever, and it was spoilers because 22% of students from 2020 didn't go to college and then they took a year off. That was the hardest year ever, and that was the year that
Oh, yes.
that was
Okay.
chaos. That was absolute chaos. This is like kind of like chilling. Like I don't know. Like my results were pretty similar. Like my early results were pretty similar to previous years. So don't fall into that trap. Don't think you're screwed. Like maybe like you go look at this chart. You are currently right. Look where you are on the chart. It's not that noticeable versus where it's been. It's slightly more competitive. Don't let anyone tell you that it's like super competitive all of a sudden. You can go back and look at 2009 where I was, and that was what everyone was telling me. And now all you little Zoomers go online and be like, back in 2009, it was easy to get into college. You know, it was like you just like Stanford had a 60% so like take a like chickadee check yourself and look at this chart, because like I guarantee the exact same student who is going to say that like I'm screwed because there's so many of us, or has heard that, is also be like, it was so easy when he was in high school. You just like had to no, it was harder. Like I had the hardest year ever. It was, and I survived. Yeah, don't panic, right? Don't believe the hype. Don't believe the hype that this year is notably different or harder. But also, I guess you can note by the way we handle these things is like, yes, there is a value in a consultant. Like that is one of the big values we have, is that we have been through this year and year and year and again. And like, yes, part of that is just building experience, knowing how to get it done. But there is just a ton of, that's why I'm excited for you to be working like super formally here in year two. I think like, I know how much I jumped from my first full year to my second full year because just the process being the same. I'm sure we'll be changing a good amount of stuff, but just like you've now applied with students to Michigan and Duke, and like you know what their supplements are, you know, and like that allows you to it's just easier because you kind of know where to take them. But also when things are different, it actually is your spidey sense, and that spidey sense is pretty helpful. I've found is like, this is different. Why is this different? That alone is a very good way to kind of know what these schools are changing or what they're thinking. But mostly, yeah, like look at this chart again. Don't you dare, because I've read the post where it's like, there's so many students. Like, no, there's not. It's like 2 years ago, there was 4.35 million. Now there's 4.45 million. You're going to be okay, child. Back in 2009, like we that was, yeah. As we all know, 2009 was the hardest year ever. There's more 34-year-olds in America than there are any other age. And that's why I didn't get into USC. So, anything else?
No, this was a really interesting discussion, and I'm looking forward to the upcoming admission cycle and TBD, because I am going to follow up with you about the video interview. Oh,
I haven't. We're going to wait to see. Like we have our best men on it right now. I put Vice President Pence as head of it. It's going to be all set by et cetera, et cetera. Thank you, Michelle. This was a good talk. I'll see you next time.
See you next time.
All right.
Thank you for watching College with Mattie. For more information or a coaching session with Mattie, visit collegewithmattie.com. You can follow College with Mattie on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Tune in next week for more episodes, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.